Te quiero dar la bienvenida a otro episodio más de Fluent with Teacher Pablo. En esta ocasión, sí soy yo, Teacher Pablo, aquí contigo. And remember that this podcast, the purpose is that we talk about different deep topics to build your English fluency and as well your critical thinking. So I'm Pablo, Teacher Pablo, and today we're going to talk about something that we often ignore, which is silence.
Such an underrated topic. Most people think silence means nothing's happening. But that's far from the truth. Silence can be powerful, strategic, and sometimes even louder than words.
Exactly. In this episode, we will explore 11 different angles, from cultural differences to business communication, personal growth, mental health, and more. And of course, we will highlight key expressions and vocabulary to help you express complex ideas with confidence.
Let's begin with the most common misconception. Silence equals awkwardness.
Yes, especially in Western cultures, silence is often treated like a failure in conversation. People rush to fill the space with small talk or noise.
But silence isn't always uncomfortable. It can be a pause for thought, a moment to reflect, or a way to show empathy.
Exactly. The key is to reframe silence not as absence, but as presence.
Did you know that in many Asian cultures, silence is a sign of wisdom or respect?
Yes, in Japan or China, being quiet often shows you're thinking deeply, not that you're shy or confused.
Meanwhile, in the US or Mexico, silence can be seen as rude or uninterested, especially in group settings.
That's why cultural fluency matters as much as language fluency. You need to understand when silence is expected and when it's misunderstood.
Let's move into business. In negotiations, silence can be a strategic weapon.
Yes, after making an offer, staying silent can pressure the other person to speak first, often leading to a better deal.
It's the classic tactic. Whoever speaks first loses.
But silence isn't aggressive. It shows you're confident and comfortable with space, and that can be very powerful in leadership. Now, in public speaking or presentation, silence used well can become a punctuation mark.
Yes, a short pause before an important sentence grabs attention. It gives people space to absorb what you're saying.
Exactly. It shows control and it makes your message more memorable.
So for our English learners, don't rush to speak. Learn to pause. Silence can add strength to your message. Let's talk feelings. Sometimes when someone is upset, the best response is not words, but presence.
Absolutely. A silent hug, sitting next to someone, letting them cry without interrupting. These forms of empathetic silence are deeply human.
And yet we often feel the need to say something when in reality the moment calls for stillness.
Si te está gustando el contenido de este podcast, te agradecería mucho que me dejes un comentario con cuál sería el siguiente tema que te gustaría ver dentro de estas conversaciones. Que te suscribas, me dejes tu like y lo compartas con quien creas que le pueda servir para poder traerte más contenido como este. That's emotional maturity, knowing when to speak and when to simply be there.
Let's bring this to the classroom. For many English learners, silence equals fear.
Yes, they stay silent because they're afraid of making mistakes or because they're translating in their heads.
But silence isn't the enemy here. It's part of the learning process.
Exactly. Give yourself permission to pause, to think, and even to stay quiet while listening. That's how comprehension grows. And to add something extra to this, this is actually what I do with my students. I always tell them to feel comfortable with speaking slower, understanding that when it is your turn to speak, you are completely under control of how fast you want to go or how slow you want to speak, and I did the opposite there. But you can control how fast you want to speak and how you want to say your things. The only thing is that you would need to be aware that your brain may stumble on a situation where either you forget a word, you forget a phrase, or simply you don't have a clarity of what's the next idea that you want to say. So holding your horses, as I normally tell my students, and understanding that speaking slower at your own pace and rhythm, along with pauses, can make flow much better.
Have you ever been in a relationship, friendship, or romantic where silence said more than words?
Definitely. Sometimes silence is love. Sometimes it's resentment. And other times it's distance.
The trick is to ask, what kind of silence is this, because not all silence is peaceful.
That's profound. Silence can be comforting or destructive. Context is everything. And as I tell my students, from first class of English up to the most advanced levels, context will always play a huge role.
Let's go a bit deeper. In spiritual traditions, Buddhism, Christianity, Sufism, silence is sacred.
Yes, in my practices, silence is the gateway to clarity, self awareness, and connection with the divine.
It's in silence that people reflect, pray, meditate, and sometimes receive their most important insights.
There's actually a reason they say silence is the language of God.
Art uses silence too. In music, rests are just as important as the notes.
Yes, the silence between the beats creates rhythm, tension, and emotion.
And in visual arts, empty space or negative space makes the subject stand out.
So, silence in art isn't emptiness, it's intentional absence that adds meaning.
Today, we're surrounded by noise, notifications, content, opinions.
Yes, silence has become rare and therefore more valuable.
Taking time away from screens, turning off the phone, or walking in nature, these are now acts of rebellion.
Or maybe acts of healing. We need to reclaim silence as a space to think, breathe, and reset.
So, Pablo, what should our listeners take from this episode?
Well, I would say that silence is not a void, it's a tool in language, in relationships, and in life in general.
It's not about speaking more, it's about knowing when not to speak.
Exactly. So don't be afraid of silence. Learn to use it, respect it, and listen to it.
And that's a lesson in both fluency and wisdom.
Thanks for joining us. As always, check out the vocabulary on the show notes. And next time you are about to speak, try pausing. You might say more with less.
Until next time, be still, be present, and stay fluent.